Officials said that the man in custody, Rashid Ralph, is a British citizen of Pakistani origin with links to al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and played a major role in the planning of the thwarted airline terror plot. Joining us now, investigative journalist Richard Miniter and terrorism analyst Steve Emerson. You know, we keep using the word, Steve, al-Qaeda. Does it matter whether it's al-Qaeda or some other group or a group that thinks they're like al-Qaeda? Are we getting too hung up in what we call the name of the group?
Well, from an investigative point of view, you want to know what organization it is. But I agree with you that it really doesn't make a difference ultimately if it's al-Qaeda or a newly formed franchise, because it's the same militant Islamic theology.
It has the fingerprints, though?
Yeah, we were talking just before here with Sean. It has the hallmark fingerprint of al-Qaeda. Multiple bombings, it was airplanes, it was going to be American targets, and spectacular attack.
Richard Miniter, these are British nationals. In fact, they're, as I understand it, South Asian, from the South Asian community. Does that mean sometimes we mistake when we think we've got to look at third world countries, we've got to look at Muslim countries, when this came out of the UK?
Well, the UK is a major problem. 1.8 million of the 60 million people living in the UK are of Muslim origin or identify themselves with that. And if you look at what they say, what they tell pollsters, it's very worrisome. 60% of Muslims in the UK under the age of 24 think that they should be living under Sharia law. 13% of them say they identify more closely with bin Laden than with Prime Minister Tony Blair. So there's a real problem in that community that needs to be addressed. But getting back to your earlier thing that you raised a moment ago, I think it does matter whether this is al-Qaeda or not. If it's not al-Qaeda, if there's another group out there that can have a plan to blow up 10 airliners over the Atlantic, a series of 3 distinct cells involving more than 50 people, if there's another terror group out there with the reach and imagination and boldness of al-Qaeda, I think we need to know that. I think that's very worrisome.
Steve, I guess the question is, how big is this group, and how many groups are there like this, maybe planning and plotting right now as we speak to do something similar?
I don't know. I mean, obviously...
We thought you had the answer. Right?
Sorry, yeah. I have to disappoint you. Look, the fact is, Richard is right, that, excuse me, that if we know there's another group out there, it would have to be very important to know that it was not al-Qaeda. On the other hand, they all spring from the same source of ideology. And that's what we have to understand, that it's a radical Islamic threat. When you raised the question about should we not profile, you were basically implying we shouldn't be profiling. Well, 80% of the perpetrators in this would-be attack were Muslim originally, named as Muslims from Pakistan. So profiling helps. It's not the sole criteria by which law enforcement should operate.
Let me jump in here, Steve. I guess as we analyze all that's happening here, we're being told by our government that these groups exist in this country. You spent a lot of time studying these groups. Should the American people, based on what you know, be concerned? What do you see out there in terms of the threat that exists right here?
I think you have a large number, a significant number of Muslims in the United States who believe the United States is the enemy. And
in the United, how many people are we talking about?
Well, I don't really know, because there's been no reliable public opinion poll. But the fact that, if we remember what happened with the trial in New York City several months ago of the would-be train bombers, when the informant went to several mosques, he found virtual unanimity in the hatred for the United States.
Richard, your thoughts on that? Are we facing a threat here within our own borders that the American people aren't aware of? Are there sleeper cells here? Are there sympathetic ears here?
Well, there's certainly, according to U.S. officials, yes, there are. And there have been more than 1,000 people in America have been deported for their connections to terrorism, some of them on immigration violations.
Right.
So that's more than 1,000 people who had violated their visas, had overstayed, who were believed to be connected with terrorism. Right. Thanks to the Justice Department's zero-tolerance policy, they were booted out of the country before they could cause harm. Then let's look at another 600 people who have been indicted one way or another with various criminal offenses. That's 1,600 people. It's not a small number, given that only 20 people carried out 9/11.
The President came under fire today for using the term yesterday, Islamic fascism. That is what we're battling. We are at war with Islamic fascists, people that believe it's okay to strap bombs on their children and send them out to kill innocent people, people that, in the name of religion, think they're going to be rewarded with virgins if they blow up airplanes. This is a perversion of Islam, isn't it?
Well, it's an interpretation of Islam.
So Islamic fascism.
It's Islamic fascism, it's militant Islam, it's radical Islam. These are terms that the Islamic groups hate because they actually want to pretend that there is no distinction between militant Islam and Islam.
But don't they want to kill Muslims? For example, this, according to the Washington Post today, it was a worried member of the Muslim community that first made authorities aware of this. They want to get
Most of the
Muslims,
victims of
Jews,
Al-Qaeda are
Christians.
Muslims.
All right, guys, we got to run. We thank you, Richard, Steve. Thank you very much for being here.